Okay, so get this. Did you know that there are over 1.5 billion people learning English right now?
Wow.
That's like 1 in every 5 people on the planet. So if you're listening to this, you are definitely not alone on this journey. And I think it's safe to say that you're probably learning English for some pretty cool reasons. Maybe you've got your eye on a dream job.
Maybe.
Or you're itching to travel the world. Or maybe you just love connecting with people from different cultures, whatever your reason.
Right.
This deep dive is here to help you unlock those possibilities and make learning English feel less like a chore and more like an adventure.
I think what's fascinating about learning a new language is that it's really like giving your brain a workout.
Oh, interesting.
And just like with physical exercise, starting small can actually lead to bigger gains. It's all about building that confidence muscle early on.
So are you saying I should ditch the grammar textbooks and just start chatting with people right away?
Not quite.
Okay.
But there's a method to the madness. You see, when you focus on mastering everyday phrases like greetings, asking for directions, or even just ordering a cup of coffee, you're not just memorizing words. You're training your brain to think in English.
To think in English, yeah.
It's like laying the foundation for fluency.
So instead of getting bogged down in complex grammar rules from the get-go, I'm essentially creating these little islands of competence that I can then build upon.
Precisely. And those small wins, like successfully ordering a meal or asking for directions, they trigger a dopamine rush in the brain.
Oh, really?
And that feeling of accomplishment keeps you motivated and makes you want to learn more. It's a positive feedback loop that keeps the learning momentum going.
That makes so much sense. It's like those aha moments you get when you finally figure out a puzzle.
Exactly.
It makes you want to keep solving more.
Yeah. And these days, there are so many fun and engaging tools that can help you build those islands of competence.
Like what?
Think Duolingo, Memrise, even good old-fashioned flashcards.
Right.
They all tap into that reward system in the brain,
Okay.
making learning feel less like work and more like a game.
Okay, I'm all about turning learning into a game. But let's be realistic here for a second. Learning a new language takes time and effort. How do I make sure English becomes a part of my daily life, not just something I squeeze in when I have a spare moment?
You know, the key is to weave English into your everyday routine.
Okay.
And don't just treat it as a separate task on your to-do list.
Got it.
Think about the things you already enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Watching TV shows, listening to music, scrolling through social media.
Yes.
And find ways to do them in English.
So instead of binge watching my favorite show with subtitles, I should try switching to the English audio track.
That's a great start. You can even begin with subtitles in your native language and then gradually transition to English subtitles as you get more comfortable.
Huh.
It's like training wheels for your ears.
That's a great way to put it.
And don't underestimate the power of podcasts. They're like portable conversation partners that you can take with you anywhere.
Ooh, podcasts are a great idea. I'm always on the go, so I can definitely squeeze in some English listening during my commute or while I'm at the gym. Any recommendations for podcasts specifically designed for English learners?
Absolutely. The BBC's The English We Speak is a fantastic one.
Okay.
They break down common idioms and expressions in these short, bite-sized episodes. Even just listening for 10 minutes a day can make a difference.
Okay, I'm adding that to my podcast list right now. But what about those times when I'm not plugged into my phone or computer? How do I keep English top of mind throughout the day?
This might sound silly, but a surprisingly effective technique is to label objects around your house with English sticky notes. It's like turning your home into an immersive language lab.
Wait, so I should put a sticky note that says refrigerator on my fridge?
Exactly. It might feel a bit strange at first, but trust me, it works.
Okay.
Every time you reach for the milk or open the cupboard, you're reinforcing those vocabulary words in your mind. And it's surprisingly fun.
Okay, I'm willing to try anything once. But let's face it, the real test of language learning is actually speaking. And I have to admit, the thought of speaking English out loud kind of terrifies me. Any tips for overcoming that fear?
The fear of speaking is incredibly common, but it's important to remember that everyone makes mistakes.
Oh, for sure.
Especially when learning something new. In fact, our brains actually learn more from our mistakes than from our successes.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's called the hypercorrection effect.
Okay.
Basically, when we make a mistake and then receive feedback,
Yeah.
it creates a stronger memory trace.
So those moments when I stumble over my words or say something completely wrong, those are actually good for my learning.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's about shifting your perspective and viewing mistakes as stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. The more you practice speaking, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You're bound to fall a few times before you find your balance.
Okay, that analogy makes me feel a bit better. But where do I even start with speaking practice? It's not like I have a native English speaker following me around all day.
Well, that's where the beauty of technology comes in.
Okay.
There are tons of language exchange platforms like Tandem and HelloTalk where you can connect with native speakers from all over the world. You can practice speaking with them, get feedback on your pronunciation, and even learn about their culture.
So it's like finding a language buddy online. That sounds way less intimidating than walking up to a stranger and trying to strike up a conversation.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of practicing with friends, family members, or even talking to yourself.
Talking to myself.
Yeah. Narrating your day-to-day activities out loud can help you get comfortable with forming sentences and using the language in a low-pressure environment.
I love that. It's like giving myself a running commentary on my life, but in English. And if I make a mistake, no one's there to judge me except maybe my cat.
Exactly. The key is to find ways to make speaking practice fun and enjoyable so it doesn't feel like a chore.
This is all super helpful. I'm already feeling more confident about my English learning journey.
That's fantastic to hear. Remember, learning a new language is a marathon, not a sprint.
True.
Be patient with yourself. Celebrate those small wins along the way, and most importantly, have fun with it.
I will. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of learning English. Last time we talked about building confidence through those small wins and really embracing mistakes. It's fascinating to me how our brains actually learn more from those humbles.
It's true. It's like each time we trip up, our brain takes a little note saying, okay, remember, that didn't work.
Right.
Let's try something different next time.
And speaking of trying things out, let's dive into the power of listening.
Okay.
Because it's just as important as speaking.
So it's not enough to just passively hear English around me. I need to actively engage with what I'm listening to.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You wouldn't expect to become a master chef just by watching cooking shows, right?
Right.
You have to get in the kitchen and actually do the cooking.
Active listening is like that. It's about engaging with the sounds, the rhythms, the nuances of the language.
Okay. So how do I go from being a passive listener to an active one? Do I need to, take notes while watching Netflix?
Not necessarily. Start by choosing audio content that's appropriate for your level.
Okay.
If you're a beginner, opt for podcasts or audiobooks designed for English learners.
Gotcha.
As you progress, you can challenge yourself with faster-paced content, like movies, TV shows, or even news broadcasts.
So it's about gradually increasing the difficulty level, like leveling up in a video game.
Exactly.
Any tips for making active listening more engaging? I have to admit, sometimes my mind wanders when I'm listening to something for too long.
This might sound counterintuitive, but try listening to the same content multiple times.
Oh, interesting.
The first time through, just focus on getting the general gist of what's being said.
Okay.
The second time, pay attention to specific vocabulary words or grammatical structures.
Okay.
And the third time, try shadowing the speaker. That's where you repeat what they say as they're saying it.
Shadowing, that sounds intense. Am I trying to become an English-speaking parrot?
Not exactly.
Okay.
It's more about mimicking the speaker's rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation. It helps train your mouth to produce the sounds of English more naturally. Plus, it's a great way to improve your listening comprehension.
That makes sense. And you know what else helps with listening comprehension? Music.
Music is a fantastic tool for language learning. It's engaging, it's emotional.
Right.
And it taps into our brain's natural rhythm and melody processing centers.
Plus, it's just plain fun. But how can I use music to improve my English skills?
Start by choosing songs you enjoy and that have clear lyrics.
Okay.
Listen to the song a few times without looking at the lyrics, trying to pick out as many words as you can. Then look up the lyrics and follow along as you listen again.
I feel like singing along is inevitable at that point.
Right.
Which is a good thing, right?
Absolutely. Singing along to English songs is a fantastic way to practice pronunciation and intonation in a fun and engaging way.
Okay. All this talk about listening is making me realize how important vocabulary is.
Yeah.
But the thought of memorizing endless word lists makes me want to crawl under a rock.
I hear you. Rote memorization isn't exactly the most effective way to learn vocabulary. Instead of trying to cram your brain with random words, focus on learning words that are relevant to your interests, goals, and daily life.
So if I'm passionate about cooking, I should focus on learning culinary terms rather than trying to memorize the dictionary.
Exactly. Not only will you be more motivated to learn those words,
Right.
but you'll also be more likely to remember them because they're meaningful to you.
Okay, I love that approach. Are there any other strategies that can help me make vocabulary learning more effective?
Absolutely. One powerful technique is spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition.
It's a learning method that involves reviewing material at increasing intervals. The idea is that by spacing out our review sessions, we force our brains to work harder to recall the information,
Yeah.
which strengthens our memory and improves retention.
So it's about outsmarting my brain's natural tendency to forget things.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
There are tons of apps and software programs like Anki and Memrise
Right.
that are designed specifically for spaced repetition learning.
Mm-hmm.
They use algorithms to schedule your review sessions based on your individual performance.
Interesting.
So you're reviewing material right before you're about to forget it.
Wow, that sounds super efficient. It's like having a personal vocabulary trainer in my pocket.
Exactly. And the best part is, these apps can be used for all sorts of learning materials.
Okay.
Vocabulary words, grammar rules, even historical facts or scientific concepts.
So spaced repetition is a secret weapon for learning anything, not just English.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool for anyone who wants to learn and retain information more effectively.
All this talk about vocabulary and listening is making me realize that I need to create a more immersive English environment for myself. But I don't exactly have the budget to move to London right now.
I hear you. But the good news is, there are tons of creative ways to immerse yourself in English without ever leaving your home. We've already talked about watching English language TV shows and movies, listening to podcasts, and reading books. But you can take it even further.
Like, what kind of further?
Think about changing the language settings on your phone and computer to English.
Okay,
It's a simple but powerful way to expose yourself to the language throughout the day.
I love that. It's like turning my digital devices into English tutors.
You can also seek out opportunities to connect with native English speakers online. Join online forums, participate in language exchange groups, or even just chat with friends or family members who speak English.
Those are all great ideas. I'm starting to see that creating an immersive environment is all about being intentional about the content I consume and the people I interact with.
Exactly. The more you surround yourself with the language, the more natural it will feel.
Yeah.
And remember, immersion doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Right.
Start with small changes and gradually increase your exposure over time.
This is all super helpful. I'm feeling motivated to revamp my English learning routine and make it more immersive and engaging.
That's fantastic to hear. Remember, language learning is a journey,
Yeah.
and it's all about finding what works best for you.
This has been such an insightful deep dive so far. I'm excited to see what other nuggets of wisdom we uncover in the final part. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into learning English. I can't believe how much we've already covered, from building confidence with those small wins and embracing the power of active listening and spaced repetition.
Yeah,
We even talked about turning our homes into these like mini English immersion zones.
it's been quite a journey,
Uh,
but we're not done yet.
okay.
There are a few more layers I think we can peel back to really help you fine-tune those English skills and really make the language feel even more natural.
I'm all ears. What aspect of language learning should we tackle next?
Let's talk about pronunciation.
Okay.
It's one of those things that can feel a bit daunting, especially when English has so many vowel sounds and consonant combinations that might not exist in your native language.
I have to admit, there are times when I feel like I'm speaking with a mouthful of marbles.
I understand. But here's the thing. Pronunciation is like any other skill.
Okay.
It can be improved with practice and the right techniques.
So how do I go from marble mouth to speaking more clearly and confidently?
One of the most effective strategies is to really tune in to how native speakers form those tricky sounds.
Okay.
It's like becoming a detective of the mouth. Pay attention to where they place their tongue, how they shape their lips, and even how they use their breath.
So it's not just about mimicking the sounds, but understanding the mechanics behind them.
Exactly. Think of it like learning a new dance move.
Okay.
You wouldn't just flail your arms around randomly. You'd watch the instructor carefully,
Right.
break down the steps, and then practice until it feels natural.
That's a great analogy. So besides playing mouth detective, are there any other tools or techniques that can help me fine-tune my pronunciation?
Absolutely. There are tons of pronunciation dictionaries and videos available online that can help you visualize and hear specific sounds. You can also record yourself speaking English and then listen back to it critically. It's like having your own personal pronunciation coach.
I'm a big fan of recording myself. It can be a bit cringeworthy at first, but it really helps you pinpoint those areas where you can improve.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment with different accents. English has so many diverse accents, from British and American to Australian and Canadian.
Right.
Exploring different accents can help you broaden your understanding of the language and develop a more flexible and adaptable speaking style.
Oh, that's a great point. It's like adding different flavors to your English-speaking repertoire.
Now, speaking of adding flavor, let's talk about idioms and slang. They're like the spices of the English language.
Yeah.
They add color, nuance, and personality.
But they can also be incredibly confusing. It's like trying to decipher a secret code sometimes.
I hear you. Idioms are phrases that have a figurative meaning that's different from the literal meaning of the individual words.
Right.
For example, kick the bucket doesn't actually involve kicking a bucket. It means to die.
Yeah. And slang is even trickier, right?
Yeah.
Because it's constantly evolving and changing depending on the region or social group.
You're absolutely right. Slang is like the trendy fashion of language. What's in today might be out tomorrow.
So how do I even begin to wrap my head around all these idioms and slang expressions?
Start by focusing on the most common ones that you're likely to encounter in everyday conversations.
Okay.
There are plenty of resources available online and in books that list and explain common idioms and slang expressions. You can also pick them up by watching movies and TV shows, listening to music, and reading contemporary fiction.
So it's all about exposing myself to real-life English, not just textbook examples.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask native speakers for clarification if you hear an idiom or slang expression that you don't understand.
That's great advice. It's like having a walking, talking dictionary at my disposal.
And speaking of dictionaries, let's talk about one last tool that can be incredibly helpful for your English learning journey.
Okay.
A good quality dictionary.
I thought dictionaries were a bit old school. Isn't Google Translate enough?
While online translation tools can be helpful in a pinch, a good dictionary provides so much more depth and nuance. It not only gives you the definition of a word, but also its pronunciation, different parts of speech, example sentences, and even its etymology.
So it's like a deep dive into the word itself.
Precisely. A dictionary is a treasure trove of linguistic information that can help you expand your vocabulary, understand subtle shades of meaning, and even appreciate the history and evolution of the English language.
Wow, I never thought of dictionaries that way. I'm definitely going to dust off my old dictionary and give it a good read.
I encourage you to. You might be surprised at how much you can learn from simply browsing through a dictionary.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've gained so many valuable insights and practical tips for improving my English skills.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you. Remember, learning a new language is an ongoing journey, and it's all about finding what works best for you and enjoying the process along the way.
That's such an important point. It's not about achieving perfection overnight, but about embracing the challenges, celebrating the small wins, and constantly expanding your linguistic horizons.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one sharing your English learning expertise with others.
That would be amazing. But for now, I'm just going to keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep falling in love with the English language.
That's the spirit. Remember, the world is full of English speakers just waiting to connect with you. So go out there, embrace the adventure, and let your English skills soar.
And on that inspiring note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of learning English. We hope you've enjoyed this journey with us.
Until next time, happy learning.